All right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being here today for our first Association Essentials series of the year. We appreciate you all taking time out of your day to be here. As a reminder, our educational library is available online at HOALiving.com. You can pull up any previously recorded sessions there. Thank you to everyone who provided input and feedback on what topics you want to discuss this year. We do have our training schedule posted at hoaliving.com/AES if you're interested what's coming in the future. And then as a reminder, all the other events for the rest of the year will be held at noon. Congratulations to our CEO, Michael Johnson. Recently a grandfather. Sydney Noel was born in November. Congratulations to him and his entire family. We truly are a local family run company. Our presenter today is Michael Johnson. He's the founder and CEO of HOALiving Companies. He started this company about 22 years ago. He is passionate for all things community association living and is a national and international faculty member for Community Associations Institute. He recently served on Utah Governor Spencer Cox's transition team, reviewing the Utah Department of Commerce. He is a member of CAI's U.S. Government and Public Affairs Committee for federal issues, and also a member of Utah's CAI Legislative Action Committee for Utah issues. So very involved. Father of 6, new grandfather, and our great employer of 150 employees. So we are going to go ahead and kick off. If you have any questions during the presentation, there is a Q&A feature that you can just drop your question into the chat, and we'll answer all of those at the end. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Michael.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, and thank you for joining us for our first Association Essentials series of 2022. It seems like it's been forever since we've gotten together, doesn't it? Well, we end in October of each year because of the holidays, and then we take January off because we're just getting back up and going, and here we are. So, effective leadership. How to create and maintain a sense of community. Now, we, as I mentioned, did some surveying of people who've participated before and people who haven't participated, and the community managers, and went through and found the topics that you wanted us to teach on. So this is one of them. And I get it. I think that we struggle, right? We do 2 to 3 things in the purposes of community associations very well. And one is just kind of like the forgotten stepchild or something. That's probably a horrible term to use, but something just doesn't click with this function like it does with the other functions. The other functions being, of course, governance. We do great at governance. We have our meetings and we follow the CC&Rs, and we're businesses, right? And so we are doing our financials and doing our fiduciary duty, and we're filing our reports with the state and filing our minutes, all those things as nonprofit corporations. But it's this building community piece that we struggle with as board members sometimes. And I say that as a reminder that we started our company because I was president of our HOA that I lived in, and continue to serve on boards today. I don't recommend managing a community that you live in, and I don't do that anymore. But so just know this comes from having been a board member and being a current board member. When I say we do things, I'm talking about myself. And this community, this third leg of the stool, is the one that we're so busy with governance and business, and we've delegated a lot of that to the community management company that community is the piece that just kind of gets missed a little bit. And hopefully this session will give us some ideas of how we can build community better in our communities. So where does community start? We look at our setup of our associations, and there's just a simple diagram, right? We have the board. There might be committees, might not be committees, and then the members and the owners are the base level. The members and owners, really, we've had this discussion previously. Unfortunately, as a member of association, the powers I have are fairly limited on purpose, but those powers, as far limited in number as in quantity, but what they encapsulate are the most important, right? Members of the association get to elect the board members or remove board members if necessary. And so that's where most of our power lies. The board's the one who's going to interview landscapers and painters and make decisions that affect individual units or the association as a whole. But the members aren't going to be involved in that. But the members get to elect those people who are representing them. And that's why elections are an important part of the process. And I believe we have a topic on elections coming up in the next year, or it might be the beginning of the year after. So we can elect and remove board members. We can amend the governing documents, right? Those CC&Rs, the declaration, they cannot be amended by just the board. It has to be the entire membership, 2/3 typically is what it has to be. And then approving special assessments or capital improvements if they're to a certain level. Sometimes the boards can do up to a certain amount. So that's really the powers of the members, the lay owners, the grassroots level in our associations. So it's the board. The board is where we need to start. That's our top of where we need to develop our community culture. And just like any business, the board, whether it's a board of directors for a corporation or a governing leadership body, they're the ones who take charge and set kind of the direction of the ship. Before we can cultivate leadership, though, we first need the leaders. So where does that come from? And leadership embodies a lot of different qualities and authorities. And in our associations, right, our leaders that we're looking at are our boards. What are the board obligations, right? The board has to use sound business judgment and act in the best interest of the entire association. Might not be their individual best interest, but because they're on the board, they have a duty to act in the best interest of the entire association, to be responsive to needs and desires of homeowners. Needs have to happen. In our budgeting AESs, we've talked about financial needs versus desires, and needs are required. Desires are just like goals or wishes, and we don't necessarily have to have them, but it's important to have a balance of bringing in some of the owner's desires into our association functions and decisions. Be familiar with the governing documents, the state statutes and the federal laws that impact the association. By virtue of you watching this session, you're showing a desire to learn how to improve yourself as a member of a board. And we help you understand those governing documents and the statutes that are applicable to you and your association. Establish and enforce those documents fairly and uniformly. Just because we live on, Apple Street in our community doesn't mean Apple Street should be the one that gets all the violation letters, because that's the one we see every day. As a board member, we need to make sure to go through the entire community and equally and fairly and uniformly enforce all of our documents and spend the money fairly and uniformly. Setting policies, standards, procedures, programs, and budgets for the association, and implementing decisions or delegating the implementation to like a management company or to committees or to independent contractors. All the while not micromanaging. If you've given an assignment to a committee or to the management company, which in a committee, those are volunteers, the management company, you're paying them a fee, a landscaper, you're paying them a fee, let them do their jobs. Yeah, give them some oversight and supervision, but don't micromanage. That will increase your cost in the long run and harm some of those vendor relationships. So when we're talking about creating community, I've removed a couple of these and just kept the ones that are most relevant. To create community, we must act in the best interest of the entire association. We must be responsive to needs and desires. We must be fair and uniform in our enforcement and our allocation of expenditures, and we must implement decisions or delegate that implementation to others. All these things help us to create community. We have several of these infographics that we use in our printed materials and in our training. And this is a common one, right? And it just shows some of the board responsibilities. You have your fiduciary, that falls under business. Your risk management, that falls under business. Human resources, business, and some governance. Enforcement, governance, maintenance is governance for the most part. Your obligation to do it, the expenditure would be the business. And then, oh yeah, community. Part of our responsibility is to preserve and promote community and harmony in our community. Well, I want to rearrange that, and the whole focus of this Essential Series course is to make community first. And how can we do that? Are you a leader or an administrator? Because they are different. And I think it's really important to understand which one you are to help you as you build community and create community in your associations. So a couple of definitions that come from some of the CAI course materials is a leader is defined as someone people choose to follow. An effective leader will get more out of their followers than the followers intended to give. While an administrator is simply defined as a person with the responsibility and authority to direct operational activities of a team by executing and implementing the project plan and scheduling resources. Blah, right? That's so boring. And so go to the top, go be the leader and be the person that people choose to follow. Be that board president or that board treasurer, that board secretary, or just that board member who helps get more out of the community than they would have given otherwise. Here's a couple of the differences too. A leader innovates while administrator just manages. A leader develops while an administrator simply implements. A leader inspires trust while an administrator simply relies on control. A leader has their eye on the future, on the horizon. Administrators looking at that bottom line right now in the current. And a leader, individuals choose to follow. Administrators, more individuals must obey. Now, it's a lot different, and you're thinking, oh, my boss at work is definitely an administrator, or my boss at work, I have a great job, and my boss is a leader. This goes for any organization, whether it's for profit or nonprofit, volunteer-based or paid employee-based. All these concepts transfer over. So leader or administrator, which one are you? And I think all of us have both the leadership and the administration side in us. But when we're trying to create community, build community, we need to focus on that leader. So bringing the communities together, bringing our communities together, your community together. What's the next step on that path? The governing documents establish, right, lots of rules, lots of regulations. but I haven't seen any that require full participation from the homeowners. Well, what does full participation look like? What is that? It's not required in the documents. And yeah, we might hang a carrot every once in a while, and we might say all the owners who come to the annual meeting in person or by proxy get a raffle drawing to win a gift card to Outback, right, or something. Or all volunteers who serve on committees will have a committee volunteer recognition picnic once a year or something. Those are carrots. But what does participation actually look like in our associations? Ideally, homeowner participation looks like this: paying assessments on time, following the rules of the association, voting in the annual elections, attending annual meetings, or submitting a proxy. I always try to tell associations, don't just give prizes for who shows up in person. People might have a valid reason for not being at a meeting, scheduling conflict or whatever. They are participating by submitting their proxy and allowing someone else or their vote to be counted. And so recognize those two. So attending annual meetings, submitting proxy, attending social functions, reading things that come out from the community, newsletters, flyers, letters, e-blast, whatever, that you take in that information so that you understand what's going on in the community. Attending board meetings, serving as committee members, becoming future board members, right? So all these things, it starts with simply doing the things that you're supposed to do in association, paying the assessment, following the rules, and getting involved in the governance side of things. So how do you inspire homeowner participation and create that sense of community? These are the things, right? How do you, as a community leader, get your homeowners to participate in these ways? Well, a big part of it that we've identified and just through reading journals of industry journals and trade publications and best practices is to help establish community identity. Your community identity can be, oh yeah, those are the people that send me a bill for $237 a month, and about twice a year they send me a nasty gram about my trash cans being left out too long. That can't be the homeowner's full interaction with you, the association leadership. That's just being administrators, right? Not leaders. So let's look at this. This is a great little graphic. So she's looking over there and she's like, Cassie, I just love living in a place where neighbors really know each other. My name's Sharon. Right? Next door, they're across the fence from one another, and she doesn't even know her neighbor's name. And so that is a little bit of the problem we have with community identity that we face these days. And it's been a thing for 20 years, actually, where we don't really know our neighbors. Who and what do you want your community to be? So do you have a community brand or identity? We're not talking about a pretty logo for your communications. We're talking about, who does this community want to be? Who do you want to represent to the outside world? If you're a community of Apple Orchards Association, what is the message that you're giving out? And build, once you have that, you've identified that, you've written it down, you documented it, build and continually improve on that identity. You decide and drive that as leaders of the association. Big warning there at the bottom, right? If you don't create it, the identity will create itself. So be proactive and be intentional to make sure that you can identify the community's identity and build upon that. Otherwise, it's going to take on a life of its own. So we're going to communicate early, and we're going to communicate often, making good first impressions, post minutes in a timely manner. That's your transparency, your communication to those who don't attend the meetings, which are most of the folks that live in your associations, what's going on. And yeah, they're not super detailed. We don't put a script of everything talked about. They're action items, but that there's a way you can do that and communicate the things that you are working on. Provide community updates regularly and solicit feedback. And let's talk about each of these things. I did want to talk about, well, we'll talk about minutes in a second, but, or maybe we don't. I'll just say it. For minutes, people are always like, well, we can't post them, Michael, because they're not approved until the next meeting. We only meet once a quarter. So we met in January. We don't approve those until April. No, I think you can post them with a notice in a box, very clear, make it red, make it highlighted. It says, these are draft minutes that will be approved at a future meeting. Come back after that time for the official record, because you're not going to be missing too much. And I think if you give that little carve out warning, people will still get the information in a more timely manner, but without having to wait. And some associations meet less often than quarterly. So first impression, how are you welcoming new people into your community, new homeowners into your association? Does a board member knock on their door and introduce themselves? Well, that's easy if it's a small association and all the board members live in the community, which is fairly rare. So, or do you have a welcome packet sent out? And so this is something that we came up. It used to be that 30 years ago, there were welcome committees. And I know we still have some great associations that still have, there are a handful of them that still have a great welcoming committee. And the welcoming committee is who goes and meets and greets new homeowners. Time has just passed. It's a little faux pas now for a lot, and we just don't do it. So we came up with, we used to have welcome committee in a box, and that now today has gotten to our welcome packet. So what do we include in our welcome packet? It comes in a pretty folder that says welcome to your HOA, and it includes, we can customize them and put whatever you want in that for your community, but it's designed to go in a mailer. And we put a local magazine like Life in Utah or Life in Idaho. We have some Arizona. We put in a local magazine like that. Then how do you sign up for auto pay or auto draft? Welcome letter from the HOA board. Homeowner responsibility chart. Okay, here's the things association's going to do. Here's the things that homeowners do. Here's the things, maybe you're in a master association. There's even another list of things they do. And maybe the master association contact is not the community management company managing the sub-association. You should include that information as well. How do you get what's allowed for satellites to be installed? Or is there cable television available? Or just high-speed internet, more of the case these days? How do trash receptacles work? Especially if it's a brand new community and they've never had a trash can, or even in some communities, the cities or municipalities that handle the trash have specific rules. Let's communicate those. How are you going to get a mail key, pool key, and clubhouse access instructions and rules? How do you access your HOA account online? And then we include our You and Your Community Association booklet, very well written from our staff, that just says, hey, now it's a little too late. They've already bought, they're already in the association, they can't change their mind, but it's great education so that they can understand, I've purchased into an HOA. Does that affect my insurance? Does that affect, do I need to get permission to do certain things on the exterior of my unit or my home? How often am I billed? When does the board meet? How can I serve? All these things are addressed in the You and Your Community Association booklet. And then other benefits, things that you want to include are customized in there. And we probably send out, we have about 50,000 total homes in our portfolio, and we send out 300 to 500 of these a month to some of our associations that have signed up to have a welcome packet anytime there's a new homeowner. In addition to welcome packets or welcoming committees, make sure that you're doing newsletters, or more common now are email blasts. And that needs to include timely updates, not just thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that. That's what newsletters become a lot. Talk about the great people in your neighborhood. Remember, we're building community. What do people do? What kind of services might they offer? Educate about your community. What is your community goals and identity that you're trying to communicate? How are you doing that? Use it to inform what kind of needs. You have needs as an association. You need volunteers to help out with socials, or with rewriting the governing documents, or closing up and inspecting the clubhouse after use. Communicate those needs. And make sure that you're soliciting feedback. We'll talk about that in just a second, but give people an opportunity so that you can hear from those 95% of homeowners who never come to any meetings. Some ideas on, and we've gone away really from the monthly newsletter or the quarterly newsletter that's front and back, or even 4 pages of articles. They're more short broadcast email messages, one topic, and they're sent out to the email list. The homeowners can decide how they want to receive those. People like to get information in smaller chunks now than in a bigger newsletter. So there's some ideas of some software that's available for board members to make them pretty. Get volunteers. There's owners who have great skills in creating things, making it look nicer for presentation. And so this is a great way to get people to volunteer and say, hey, here's our message, make it pretty, and then they can help and get it to the management to get distributed. And then also you can hire, you can pay a third party, you can pay. Our management team often does hourly work for associations who want to create different broadcast messages for folks. Soliciting feedback. If you don't know, if you don't ask, then you'll never know. It says you don't know if you don't ask. Are you conducting frequent homeowner surveys? Do you know what the homeowners really want in your community? The board may identify issues one way, but you need to find out for sure. The board, and we see this a lot, like the board's all like, no one cares, no one comes to meetings. We sent out a little blurb and asked people for their ideas, and we got a couple of responses, but 90% of the community didn't respond. And so it's 10% of the community is driving the bus on what you're doing. And a survey is a great way to broaden that impact, especially with quick electronic surveys that can be put together electronically. People just get a quick link. Don't make them too long, not too many questions. Once again, it's better to have a lot of little ones over the course of a year than one giant one that's getting out the information. So, and we here at the HOALiving companies, CAM and FCS, A+, everyone, we can create, we have some survey services that we subscribe to, and we can help you create your survey for your community. So talk to your community manager about possible options for that. So after we're gathering input and soliciting input, how do we engage our communities? So does your association have an online or social media presence? And if so, you need to make sure you're part of it. A lot of the social media, I'd say 90% of the social media that's out there is not association sponsored. It was set up by a group of homeowners. They're the administrators, and they're driving an agenda, or they're driving the bus of what's communicated on that. And they've got a lot of people have joined that, and they actually think that's the official communication channel of the association. Well, the ship's already sailed. That's already out there. So let's use it as a tool and be listening, be reading the post. And if there's just something that's not correct, make sure that you engage, that you respond. And people say, well, we don't want to respond. We don't want to give any legitimacy to this Facebook group. It's all, people already give it legitimacy. And so you need to make sure you engage and respond and set the answers correctly. We have a director of client relations office here at HOALiving, and you can ask, and if you have a site, and they're not going to do the constant monitoring for you, but they can subscribe, become members of some of those groups. Sometimes the administrators won't let a non-community member get in those groups, so that's why it needs to be another committee member or a board member to do that. But we do have our director of client relations. We do follow several that we can, but we're not always watching those. Make sure that we're having social events and activities. This is my little soapbox that I get on a lot, that we just have this mindset here, and it is declining a little bit, but a mindset that the local church of predominance will host all the social activities for our neighborhood. Well, that's great if you're a member of that predominant faith, but not everyone is. And so, and they're not comfortable in coming to an event, even though it's labeled as a community event, if it's sponsored by a religious group. And that goes for any religious group. And so make sure that your community as an association is holding social events and activities. Try different things. You can use Zoom, you can use social distancing. Hopefully, knock on wood, we seem to be in a good downturn of the pandemic right now, and hopefully it's going away forever. But different ideas, like the get cheered, get booed, or get elf, depending on type of year, where you leave a note and a small gift at someone's door, and it says, hey, put up a little sign that you've been booed, a little ghost or something, and then you go give a little gift in the note to someone else in the community. And everyone sees it going up, and it's just a way to build community. There's a lot of very inexpensive things that you can do. Use the tools that you have for all of this. We have an owner portal. There's a community calendar in there. There's e-blasting and documents that can be posted, flyers and things like that. Zoom has increased so much our participation that we've seen in association meetings, board meetings, and annual meetings. More owners are checking in on them than ever did before when they were in person. So use those tools to, Facebook Live, those kind of things. And then jump on trends. The Wordle competition thing is blowing up right now. I generally refuse to do all those things. Okay, I refuse to do word games because my brain doesn't think that way and I always lose. So no Scrabble, no Wordle for me. Give me like something with numbers or colors or pretty, then I got it. And TikTok sharing, those kind of things. Jump on trends. That's, and it depends on the age and the makeup of your community, of course. Man, so Michael, what you're saying is to build community, to create community here in our association, we need to do way more work than we're already volunteering to do. Well, how do we handle that workload? Okay, we need to ask for help. Ask for help. The welcome packet, we have a lot of communities that have a please volunteer sheet right at the very front, and it lists, you can be on the social committee, you can be on the grounds committee, you can be on the architectural review committee. Just different opportunities for people to be involved. Ask often, ask frequently. Accept the help of volunteers. Boards, sometimes they want to keep it in-house and they don't want, and I've got a friend just up the road here who is not on his board, and the board's rewriting the association's governing documents right now. And he just wants to help give input. He knows he's not on the board, but he wants to help give input, and the board won't accept any volunteers in that process. That's bad. It's bad. And it's not a healthy association. And so accept the help of volunteers. And then, for goodness sakes, please praise the help that you do receive. Honor them, recognize their efforts and their contributions. Everyone likes to hear their name and a thank you, and find ways to make sure that we're getting that out there. How do we attract volunteers? Well, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? So we're asking, always asking, and we're communicating, building avenues that allows people to where they fit in. So, maybe you need some help with the financials or the budget, and some great people to do that are some bookkeepers, but bookkeepers are pretty busy this time of year from about mid-January till mid-April, and then they kind of need a 4-week vacation. And so those kind of projects need to be in their off season. There's different things you can think about. School teachers that have the summer off, well, maybe they're more apt to be able to volunteer in the summertime for you. A lot of times we communicate we need these volunteers, and we don't say you're going to meet 1 hour a month, every other month. You're going to meet 1 hour every other month for 3 months. You got to detail the job so they know what they're volunteering for. Lead by example. Board members are the biggest recruiters for committees and volunteers. So look for folks in your community that have an interest to serve. And, think about the possible short-term and flexible projects to increase the number of people who can volunteer. There's this COVID shift, and it's interesting. Very few communities have very active committees, 4 or 5 committees with 5 people on it each. That's pretty rare, no matter what size of a community you are. That we have seen those numbers decrease a little bit, but we have seen increases in volunteer participation in all of our other communities that didn't have, because people are more easily able to connect and meet via virtual meetings. So consider that when you are putting together meetings, whether it be board or owner meetings or committee meetings or volunteer opportunities. Investing in the skills and the tools that you need, right? So relationship management, community outreach, communication, we talked all about those. We have here in gray, event planning. We are in the process of setting up a lifestyle services department here that will be staffed by a couple of full-time professionals and then a bunch of summer helpers that can come to your community at a discounted fee. We're not looking to make money. We just got to cover the cost to throw big community parties, or even little community parties, or movies in the park, or just an ice cream stand, whatever you want to do. We're putting together a group that can help if you can't find the volunteers. I like this from Walt Lippmann. The final test of a leader is that he leaves behind him in other men or women, I'll say, the conviction and the will to carry on. So are you leaders? Are you building the replacements? I'm sure you would love to serve on the board for the rest of your life. No, you probably have better things to do, other organizations that could use your time. Yes, you're very good at it, and we appreciate that you're here, but is that going to help the future of the community by you, one person, staying in charge for years and years and years? So here's some actionable steps as we finish off today of things that you can do. Building community, evaluate. Where are you really at today? Where are we on? Do we have a firm community mission statement? Do we have vision and goals that we are working to? Are we looking out the horizon? Where are we at today? Do we have any volunteers? Do we have any committees or things committees can help us with? And where do we need to improve? And then implement, consider some options and take action, and then repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. So evaluating, let's go to Oliver. Do you know? Have you asked? And have you listened? Implement. What ideas from today can we implement now? What's feasible and sustainable? And let's go do it. Go be do. And it's a big circle, right? It's a continuing cycle of a living, breathing beast that you need to feed to keep happy and moving. Community is that beast, and it's got to be fed by repeating processes over and over to keep the community being built. Homeowners have power. Engaging them is the key to creating a sense of community. Board members, thank you for all that you do. You'll never be thanked enough by the people in your community for all that you do. But you don't have to do it all alone. And let's be bold. Let's go ask for help, and let's receive that help, and then let's implement some of that help. This will build the sense of community in our associations, and it'll make your life more well-balanced, and it will make your community a better place, a place that people want to live. It can be the greatest if it's done right. It's not easy to get going, but once you get going and keep feeding that beast, then it just kind of happens. Hey, I appreciate your time today. We're going to open it up a little bit for some questions and answers. And I look forward to seeing you next month when we talk about legislative update and case law. So thanks.
Thank you, Michael. That was a lot of great information. There were some good questions that came in the chat, and so we'll engage in that conversation here over the next few minutes as we wrap up. We realized we neglected to introduce ourselves, so we apologize. I am Scott Anderson. I'm the Vice President of Community Management here at CAM in St. George. As I've looked over the participant list, I've noticed I've engaged with a lot of you, and so thank you for all that you do. And we also have Tiffany Madsen, who works with FCS Community Management up in Draper, working with developing communities. And so there is this sense of needing to build community and get your community off to a good start. And so let's hit a couple of these questions. So one that came in is, we are in a 55+ community where some of the members are not super tech savvy. How do we engage those homeowners when all the tools are online? Obviously, we've talked a lot about online tools. That's kind of where the world is going. But it's important to remember that all the suggestions that we're giving today with Michael, it really needs to be fine-tuned to the personality and to the needs of your community. If you have residents that are not online for whatever reason, we need to figure out a way to do that. The management software that we employ right now, we can do broadcast messages, and then if those that don't have emails, we can email those residents. We can mail those residents hard copies of flyers or newsletters or that sort of thing. I also joke with my wife that I'm really an old man in a young body. I prefer like the hard newspaper. And so if you have a place in your community where you can post flyers, if you have a clubhouse with a bulletin board, or something that you can engage people as they come in and out and just catch their attention with flyers, that I'm always a proponent of that, just because it makes that engagement a little bit easier. And so depending on where your open spaces are, if you have a clubhouse, if you have a bulletin board, you can post those, or we can continue to mail out hard copies of newsletters or meeting announcements or whatever it happens to be to those folks. Tiffany, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just echo that. It's really about knowing your community. I have several communities that electronic messaging just doesn't work. It doesn't work to be as effective as something, say a door hanger, whether it's, you know, the community is a 55+ community that prefers those personalized notifications that come directly to their door. They can just pull it off their door handle, or there's a high tenant population in a condominium community and we want to get the information out to the people that actually live there. I think some of those old school methods really can prove to be the most effective. And just echoing what Scott says, it's really about fine tuning for your community, what's effective. And you know, that's a great opportunity to utilize a survey or something like that. Hey, what's the best way for us as the HOA to communicate with you? And it really just depends on the community. So good question, Trudy.
Because really what we're talking about, right, is engaging in the involvement that I want to be involved with. Because if I want to just receive email notifications, there's a place for that. If I want more engagement, because a lot of times and this is sort of what Michael touched on, a lot of times we talk about community as being what events are offered in the association, but it's more than that. It's engaging on a level that I can access the information when I need it. And how do we make sure that people feel welcome within our community? You know, like Michael kind of talked about, oftentimes, unfortunately, someone's first introduction to the community is a fine notice, because they're like, hey, I broke this rule that I didn't even know existed. So how do we flip that on its head? And one of those things is the welcome packet that can be customized and given them some information. I know a couple communities that I've worked with in the past have put together just a friendly reminder that says, hey, you're in an HOA, and in our particular association, here's the top 5 things to keep in mind: where to keep your trailer, where to keep your garbage can, that sort of thing. So we set them off on the right foot so that they don't become a horror story that we talk about often when we in HOAs, where HOAs tend to get a bad rap. But how do we avoid that? And setting people off on the right foot is a easy way and a worthwhile endeavor to try to set them up for success.
Yeah. Next question, perfect segue there, Scott. Leading into the next question, what is the price of a welcome packet? So if you're interested in welcome packets, touch base with your community manager. They can pull up your contract and give you the pricing for the welcome packet and what inserts you want in it, because it really is a customizable option for your association. So get in touch with your community manager.
I will add, in general, those cost between $35 and $50 per packet, depending on what you're adding in there. If you have a lot of customizable information, it will be more on the $50 side. If it's kind of a standard, to say, hey, welcome to the community type of thing, it'll be more on the $35. But as Tiffany mentioned, you can work with your community manager and kind of work through those details, and we can fine tune that price for you. But is just to keep in mind, it's about $35 to $50 depending on what goes in there. All right, so let's talk about events, right? Like events in our community, and how to do it, because oftentimes it's hard. And again, the nature of our communities kind of depend on how that engagement happens. If we have a large open space in our community, then it's a little bit easier to have gatherings, community gatherings. If we have a clubhouse, obviously that lends itself to having community events. But there's also other ways to engage your community. I managed a community for a long time in South Jordan, Utah, that they identified a problem. They had a bunch of owners that wanted to have garage sales, but their CC&R specifically prohibited garage sales. And they're like, how do we navigate that without amending the documents? Because as we all have tried to amend documents, that's quite the laborious process, right? But they identified a problem and said, hey, how do we allow owners to do a garage sale and build that sense of community. What they ended up doing is they worked together and identified a Saturday in the spring and a Saturday in the fall that they would set aside as community yard sale day. And so owners could have the yard sale in their own yard, or they could go up to their clubhouse area and to have set up a booth, kind of like a farmer's market type of thing. And then on the association would post banners at the entrances and also do a post in the paper to catch people as they were yard selling. But the event became super, super popular and ended up taking on a life of its own towards the end of my involvement with that community. They started having people come with like snow cones and food trucks, and they ran a train around the clubhouse parking lot. And so it really became an event that the community looked forward to. And on the Saturdays, on the years that those Saturdays got rained out, you best believe the next board meeting they were in trying to figure out when to schedule that and when to move it so that we could continue to have the event, because the community really looked forward to it. So it's an interesting approach to solving an idea in your association and flipping that on its head, taking a negative situation, flipping it on its head and turning it into a positive that the association really engaged in, look forward to. So as you're looking for events in your association, one trick to the trade is to look at a problem that you're trying to solve. Do you have low participation at your annual meeting? Okay, let's put an event right in front of our annual meeting and then move it in. Associations have had barbecues, tied their annual meeting to a barbecue so that we get them, hey, we have a captive audience, we might actually get quorum for the first time. Or Michael made reference in his presentation to a raffle, and allowing people to engage in the annual meeting through a raffle and getting their participation. So what's it? Identifying a problem in your association and then looking for a positive way to resolve that can go a long way. Tiffany?
So I was trying to think of some examples in my communities, and one of the most common things that I hear from boards about, it's this cost burden, right? There's a cost burden of hosting events. We don't have the funds to be able to host an annual event every year. And I've had associations that, as this idea has become more prevalent of having the sense of community in events or in engagement or whatever the case may be, setting aside that money as a budget line item. Hey, we're going to budget for one event every year, $1,000, which depending on the size of your community might seem a lot or might seem a little, but it's showing that there's effort being put in for trying to have this sense of community and promote that. I love the idea of roping it into your annual meeting. Hey, we're going to have a barbecue. We're going to have an annual, because it really kind of combines that into one and gets you the feedback that you need to be able to elect board members, or like Scott said, actually make quorum, which can be difficult when there's low participation. So I love the idea of being intentional about it, putting it in your budget to have that event planned. Another thing I thought of in one of my other communities is something as simple as, hey, do you have a playground in your community? Let's have a name the park contest. We're going to name this park. We're going to send out a survey asking for ideas, and then the board is going to vote on whatever the best idea is, or, the most appropriate, or whatever it ends up being. But facilitating conversation with the owners who live in the community of, hey, we want to name this park. We want to make a legacy for our time as a board. We want to name this park and we want to get community feedback. That's something that isn't community engagement that costs zero money. It's just sending a survey and asking for owner feedback. The other thing that I thought of when, again, sometimes it's the financial repercussions of hosting an event. Maybe that doesn't work for your community. Reaching out to your landscaper or your snow removal company or your insurance provider and asking them if they'd be willing to help sponsor an event. Hey, we'll let you do a pop-up booth. We're going to do a community barbecue. Would you be willing to contribute as a sponsor? And we'll let you have a little booth. We'll put your name on stuff, whatever. And asking the people who service your community to be sponsors for those events can can also reach out to your city, or, hey, we have this great idea, we want to do this. Can we make it a citywide event, but host it in your community? And it really helps interact and have positive interaction with your specific community. So
yeah, because it's really the grassroots efforts that stick, that have the lasting effect in your association. I managed one other one, if you'll indulge me for just a minute, that there was a homeowner there that was in charge of a nonprofit organization, and they did the exact same thing. They did a county fundraiser for raising money for cancer, for events that were affected, for households that were affected by cancer within Tooele County. And they did all the fundraisers within that association. They had a big park, they did a 5K, the whole nine. But they engaged a person that was a specialist in that area, but she also lived in the community and got great community participation. But it brought traffic from outside of the association to the association. So they really were sort of the flagship for that area of Utah, and made great change. And so it's really fantastic if you can get these events going. It is hard work, but engaging your homeowners and getting people that are willing to do it. You know, some people are great at planning activities, but they don't want to serve on the board. So get them involved in planning activities, because they're like, hey, I can do this a couple times a year. I don't have to go to the annual meeting. But those are the people that are really going to tap into the power of your association, create lasting events that are going to have an impact on your association, and give your community and your neighborhood a great reputation where people want to live. Because really, we all want to live somewhere where we're proud to put our name and really say, hey, we have the best neighbors in the valley. And the way to do that is to engage our owners and make sure that if we are engaging our owners, it also makes having the difficult conversations a lot easier when there's neighbor disputes, because, hey, I actually know who you are. Your name's Sharon, and I don't call you Kathy, type of thing, right? We know who they are, and we can solve those disputes a little bit easier. And if you get the people that really want to see the affected change, those are the people that will become your great board members, because they'll see the progress made in the association. They will put in time and effort into planning and really want to make your association successful. So we thank you for your participation today. As we're winding up, we look forward. If you have further questions, follow up with your community manager or send us an email, and we're happy to touch on those throughout the month as we get ready for our next AES that is scheduled for March 23rd at noon. We'll be talking about the 2022 legislative session and what impacts that has for you as board members and also as a member of the association within the HOA world. But we thank you for your time and for your effort in making your communities the best place to live. We choose to be in this industry. You live there. We just want to be great business partners. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.